I read. Welcome to another edition of the Roaring Lion Digest. Now, for today, I've got something very interesting for you if you are an HR person or if you are a manager who's trying to hire staff and you have difficulty. Or rather, I think you may have difficulty based on an article that I read last week. So today it's about hiring employees, and I'm going to show you how to do it the right way. Let me just take you to this article which I read last week. Nope, not this one, but this one. Now, here, this newspaper article came out last week, and this gentleman was calling on the government to set up a repository. Apparently, this guy, who is a representative or the president of the Malaysian Employers Federation, feels that without this repository, employers have difficulty hiring the right staff because there are apparently a lot of employees or candidates who are cheating their way through with false certificates. So he wants the Malaysian government to set up a repository of all the certificates that are issued by all the institutions, the educational institutions all over the world. Now, I got no idea how many institutions there are in the world, but I guess there's probably going to be probably a few 100,000. Now, I can't imagine the Ministry of Labor or the Workforce, the Ministry of Workforce, actually sending out or trying to collect and collate all this information from all these few 100,000 institutions all over the world. Now, I guess this gentleman is requesting for this because a lot of employers have difficulty in trying to sieve out the right candidates. And now, based on this, I've done some research, and there is one research which says that CGPA, or grade point average, or cumulative grade point average, well, there's a lot of controversy in this. Some people believe it kind of predicts whether an employee is going to be skillful or whether it's going to perform on the job, depending on the CGPA. Apparently, the higher the CGPA, the higher your performance level. And according to this, well, there is one analysis that was done way back in 1996, as you can see here. And according to this, there is a correlation. The higher your CGPA, the more likely that you will perform well in your job. But there's a caveat. And let me find that here. According to this study, it says that, yeah, here you go. Grades reported in the earlier decades seem to be better predictors than those in the latter decades, which only goes to show that CGPA is probably not a good indicator of performance levels. Now, what I would like to share with you now is something which is not scientific, but I think it is something that is based on my experience, and I have spent 20 plus years, close to 30 years actually, in the corporate world, employing staff, and I was specifically in the pharmaceutical industry. Now, if you are familiar with the pharmaceutical industry, especially in the multinational corporations, you will realize that we tend to be sticklers for employing good staff because we are a multi-billion-dollar industry. So we cannot just make mistakes on employing some staff who are not good enough. So I'm going to reveal to you what I used to do. And since this is based on my experience, of course it's not scientific, but I've employed hundreds of employees and it has worked for me. And what I do, and I call this actually the 4 rights formula. And this 4 rights formula basically says that you employ the right person, you give them the right training after you've employed the right person, you evaluate them, and you guide them towards achieving the right performance. And when they have performed at the level that you expect them to, reward them. That's what the 4 rights formula is. And this is what I used to do. In order to get the right person, first and foremost, the interview process is, of course, the most important tool. And you can find that in every human resource or human capital textbook that every HR manager uses in the colleges. Number 1, and this is what I've noticed while I work with a lot of HR managers today as a consultant, many of them are not very fluent in asking questions. Now, because I come from the sales background, asking the right questions and digging deep to understand the candidate, I'm at an advantage. But I think everybody can be trained. Even HR managers can employ the question tool. By asking the right questions and powerful questions, you will be able to dig and determine if the candidate is the right person and whether he or she will perform eventually. So number 1, power questions. Number 2, employing scientific selection method. What this means is that you remove all your biases and prejudices. Now, many occasions I have tended to fall towards a specific person because of the level of attractiveness that a person has. And coming from the sales field, we tend to employ attractive people, however you define that. But there have been studies that show that attractive people are better salespeople. So we tend to avoid, in order to avoid our personal biases, we have to have a selective technique that is involved. And this involves weighted average for all the different metrics that you want to measure during the interview to determine if this person can actually do the job that you want them to do. Next is what we used to do, or what I used to do, is that every candidate that comes in, whether it's for the position of a sales rep or a sales manager, we make sure that they go, we test their skills, their sales management skills, or even their selling skills. Now, I have employed a lot of fresh graduates. I never look at the CGPA. At the most, I look at what subjects that they have studied, what was in their curriculum, and that's about it. I do not care what marks they got, because that doesn't determine anything for me, it doesn't help me in any way. But when I get them to actually go through a sales process, a mock sales process, I'm able to see if this person can actually perform in the field, which is what is most important for me, not so much their CGPA. And finally, utilizing psychometric tests. Now, there's a lot of discussion and debate about the validity and the power of psychometric tests. In my personal opinion, employing more than a few hundred people, what I've noticed is that accuracy is about 95%. Now, every time I've gone through that, which is about one or two cases, I've realized that I should not have gone against the results of the psychometric test. So I rely a lot on psychometric tests, and I think it's an extremely powerful tool. It's not that expensive, it's worth it, especially if you are in an industry where the productivity of the person is extremely high. Now, the 4 rights formula. Basically, if you use the 4 rights formula, you get the right person. Let me just pull up their slide again. You get the right person, you give them the right level of training, you measure their performance and coach them and help them achieve their goals for the year. And when they achieve their goals, you reward them. What are you doing? You're basically developing a superior company, and therefore the 4 rights formula helps the company achieve superior corporate performance. Now, going back again to the 4 rights formula, if you look at all this, employing the right person, providing the right training, evaluating the right performance, and coaching people and helping them, as well as ensuring that they are rewarded effectively. Isn't this the job of a CEO? Isn't this leadership, basically? So at the end of the day, the 4 rights formula is about leadership. So coming back to this guy who was in the Malaysian Employers Federation, lamenting that companies are not able to employ the right staff, or they are being conned by crooked potential candidates. It just goes to show that the CEOs in these companies are not up to the mark. It's a sign of very poor leadership. So if they employ this, their leadership level increases, and therefore they will get the right stuff. Well, that's it from me for today, and I wish you a very good evening, good night, good day, wherever you're from. Thanks. Stay tuned for the next